Assalamu alaikum everyone. I'm joined today by Ahmed Qureshi and Hassan Aslam Shah. Ahmed, as you all know, is a well-known Pakistani journalist with 2 decades of experience in Pakistan and the Gulf region. And Hassan is the first Pakistani representing Pakistan at International Criminal Court. And he has been advising Prime Minister Imran Khan on legal aspects of Kashmir issue. Thank you for joining us today. Through the resolution adopted by OIC in Islamabad, we know that OIC will establish a humanitarian trust fund under Islamic Development Bank for Afghanistan, and they will launch a food security program. Looking at the outcome of this extraordinary session, how successful do you think it was? If you want to go first, Hassan?
Sure, Qudsiya. Thank you for this question. Look, I've been pondering over it, and recently I've written a piece on this as well. What I've done is I've sort of tried to bring out my analysis of the importance for Pakistan to have organized this session for Afghanistan, and obviously the importance for Pakistan to recast its image as well internationally, because we have been lumped with Afghanistan, and the West sees both as one. Now, in terms of the impact, it's too early in the day to know how far this will go, but Pakistan has at least done the heavy lifting on its own, and it has managed to organize a platform where for the first time the world, the global community has come to know about the humanitarian crisis, the gravity of the crisis that is faced by the Afghans. So, in a sense, Pakistan has done what no other country had been able to do, or perhaps was willing to do. So, in terms of that, I think all the marks go to Pakistan. As far as how far this will go, that will be seen. The results will come out in the future. Because so far we have only seen Saudi Arabia make a pledge of some $260 million, which is commendable. Saudi Arabia was the only country that made this pledge. But the fact that this platform was convened, 52 other Muslim countries or 57 other Muslim countries participated in the session, I think gave much needed traction to Afghanistan, and also enabled Pakistan to assume center stage. Pakistan has had this tag in the West of supporting militancy, and this has played havoc with our foreign investment in the country and our prospects globally. So in terms of both, I think it's a good start. Now, another thing that Pakistan would need to do, in my view, is to make sure that the line doesn't go slack. So this matter has to be kept alive, and I believe that Pakistan should reach out individually to Muslim countries and remind them of the pledges, if any, that they've made, and also engage them to further assist Afghanistan. At the same time that we do this on a one-to-one basis, in line with our recent policy posture of geoeconomics, I think this is a good opportunity for us to repitch ourselves as the pivot state, which is looking at being the facilitator of trade and connectivity in the region. So in order to do that, we should be reaching out to the US, China, and Russia, and perhaps we should be looking at another summit. Again, it may not be possible for us to do it on our own. We may have to reach out to our friends and allies, and through their support, we should convene this second summit. In the end, it's all going to be for the betterment of Afghanistan, and obviously we may have to package this as a humanitarian endeavor. But in the end, it's going to do 2 things. It's going to help the Afghans, and it's also going to help us, jumpstart our economy and become in the good books of the international community, which is something that we have been desperately trying to do over the last many, many years. So I think this is a very good opportunity for Pakistan, And as I said earlier, this was much needed for Afghanistan as well, which has suffered for decades, and there has to be an end to the suffering. If the world community does not move now, then it would be nothing short of a catastrophe for Afghanistan and resultingly also for Pakistan.
Right. So Hassan, you are saying that Pakistan should keep this issue alive. And this is an opportunity for us to repitch ourselves as the pivot state. And we should reach out to all the major powers, China, Russia, and USA. Ahmed, I want to ask the same question from you. What is your viewpoint on the outcome of this extraordinary session of OIC? How do you see it? How successful do you think it was?
Thank you, Qudsiya, and thank you, Hassan, also for your interesting input. So I will basically begin by saying that just a few minutes ago, I think about half an hour ago, the Afghan Foreign Ministry posted a picture of a meeting between the Trade Minister of Kazakhstan and the Foreign Minister of the Interim Government of Afghanistan, Amir Khan Muttaqi, and Bakhit Sultanov, who is the Trade Minister of Kazakhstan, who is in Kabul right now, this evening, and met with the Afghan Foreign Minister. And Kazakhstan obviously is the largest country in Central Asia, one of the large nations and member states of the OIC, and a country with tremendous relationships with major powers, the West, the US, Russia, and China. And basically this picture, this story, this news of this overt and formal and official meeting between a Kazakhstan minister with the minister of the interim government of Taliban basically shows that in the next coming days and after the OIC CFM in Islamabad, we will see increased interaction between Taliban-led government of Afghanistan, which is yet to be recognized, and interactions with the other states and governments. And basically this is a key success of the OIC CFM, which basically the problem before this OIC CFM, the meeting of the Council of Foreign Ministers, was the main problem was that countries of the world and most countries of the region, except maybe the neighbors, but most of the other countries of the region were reluctant to engage with the Taliban-led government in order not to bestow recognition on this government. As the OIC CFM resolved this problem by devising a mechanism to legitimize contact with the Taliban-led government without recognizing it formally, in order to offer and deliver humanitarian aid to Afghan people. So this was a key problem that was being faced by the international community. Many wanted to help Afghan people, but they did not want to be seen endorsing the Taliban-led government. This problem was resolved with the OIC CFM. We have this meeting today with the Kazakhstan Trade Minister. But before that, we had several other meetings. For example, on the 19th, when the CFM was taking place in Islamabad, one of the high-profile meetings was the meeting between the Foreign Minister of Indonesia with the Foreign Minister of Afghanistan interim government, the Taliban-led government, Amir Khan Muttaqi. This was a major meeting. Why? Because Indonesia, and very symbolic, because Indonesia is the largest Muslim nation on earth, the largest member state by population of the OIC, and it was symbolic in terms of engaging the Taliban government, which was being shunned so far by everyone, with the exception maybe of the United States because of Doha talks and the immediate neighboring countries of Afghanistan. Everyone else was shunning this government after 15 August. So this was a key meeting, and it is also important. Why? Because for another reason, the Foreign Minister of Indonesia, the largest Muslim nation on earth and member states of OIC, is also a woman politician, states basically a woman foreign minister. And not only a woman foreign minister, but she's very outspoken on women's rights. And in her meeting with Amir Khan Muttaqi, the Taliban foreign minister in Islamabad, on the sidelines of the OIC CFM, she actually urged Taliban government to ease restrictions on the education of women. So it was significant, that meeting. And immediately after the OIC CFM, we saw a number of international steps taking place, one after the other, major steps, all that go in favor of Afghanistan and the Afghan people, and also in an indirect way in favor of the Taliban-led government, beginning with the OIC Secretariat in Jeddah appointing an OIC special envoy on Afghanistan. His name is Tariq Ali Bakhit, and he's a very senior diplomat from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Sudan. And he has served in New York at the United Nations and other international organizations, and he has very, very good contacts internationally. He will be basically, his main task is to devise a mechanism so that the world can give aid to Afghan people with guarantees that this aid will reach Afghan people and not go into the hands of Taliban, which is the concern of many countries that would like to give aid to Afghanistan but are wary because they do not want to give that aid directly into the hands of Taliban because it's yet to be recognized as a fully fledged government of Afghanistan. It is being used as a de facto government. So that was one key immediate result of the OIC CFM, the appointment of the OIC Special Envoy, Ambassador Tariq Ali Bakhit, who will now coordinate with his counterpart in the United Nations Secretariat, the Special Representative of the Secretary General of the UN for Humanitarian Affairs, Martin Griffiths, who was also in Islamabad for this meeting. So this immediate result has been seen, and immediately after that we saw the United States table a resolution in the UN Security Council to ease restrictions on the Taliban. Initially, the US draft was very generous with regards to removing restrictions on the Afghan banking system and some of the restrictions on the Taliban. Unfortunately, Russia, China, India, and some other countries objected on this draft. So the U.S. delegation basically removed some of the other generous parts of the draft and restricted the draft somewhat and retabled the draft in the UN Security Council. This time, Russia and China did not object, India did not object, and other member states did not object, and it was passed. We have this resolution now, Resolution 2615, which has eased restrictions both on some of these sanctions on Taliban and some of these sanctions on the Afghan banking system in order to facilitate international aid. The U.S. Secretary of State welcomed it officially, and also after that, immediately after that, the U.S. equivalent of the Finance Ministry, which is the Treasury Department, basically issued a statement taking 3 steps to remove some of those banking restrictions. So overall, we have a number of steps that have been taken immediately after CFM Islamabad, which resulted in paving the way for international aid now to be organized. Now, one key thing to keep in mind is that the OIC CFM was not a donor conference. So this was not a conference for anyone to announce aid and announce numbers and figures in terms of what aid will be given. So nobody was obligated and nobody was expected to announce any numbers or figures in terms of what aid they will give, although many countries are ready actually to provide that. But the Saudis took a lead and they announced the 1 billion riyals, which is equivalent to $250 or $260 million, as Hassan just now mentioned. It was their individual decision of Saudi Arabia to do this, but it was not obligatory for other members and other countries that were present at the OIC CFM to announce anything, because this meeting was not to announce any aid figures. This meeting had only one agenda, which is how to give aid to Afghan people without seeming to recognize Taliban government. And that problem was to be resolved. It was a serious problem, and let me conclude by saying this. This was a serious problem. Why? Because before this OIC CFM Islamabad, even Arab and Muslim countries were not ready to give aid to Afghan people through Taliban for 2 or 3 reasons. Number one is most of the Arab and Muslim countries do not want to endorse the idea of a militia taking over a country. So this was a key thing. It was a diplomatic thing. Many were reluctant to endorse the idea that a militia can take over a government and then we can establish relations with it. Nobody wanted to do that, number one. And number two, many of the Arab and Muslim countries were not happy with the Taliban interpretation of Sharia and the restrictions on women and so forth. So these 2 main things were actually the problem. The OIC CFM resolved that, obviously. So after that, now we see Kazakhstan moving, we see other countries moving as well. One more thing I should mention that when I say that many of the Arab and Muslim countries were reluctant, it's important to highlight this point. Why? Because there's this impression that it was just the Western countries which had objections on the Taliban. And this is incorrect. Many of the major Arab and Muslim countries had this objection. I mentioned the foreign minister of Indonesia, who publicly, on many occasions, actually asked the Taliban to remove restrictions before this OIC CFM, and she did that, and she did this finally, and repeated her demand face to face with the Afghan foreign minister here in Islamabad. Number one, and the Turkish foreign minister, Mevlut Çavuşoğlu, also publicly, in fact, in the opening session of the OIC CFM. Was very blunt in asking the Taliban to grant the legitimate rights of Afghan women to work and to study and to gain education. And he did that very publicly. So you have Turkey, you have Indonesia. Obviously, Pakistan has also made these demands in several statements before by the foreign minister, Shah Mahmood Qureshi. And so all of these things are very, very positive developments. Last, I will just mention very quickly that for the OIC, this was a major important event. OIC has recently been very active on a number of things. It has a list of issues where it had acted very strongly and robustly. For example, Bosnia and some other issues. More recently, it was the Rohingya and Myanmar, and it was the OIC actually that went to the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, and made the first move on the Rohingya, which then was matched by other Western countries as well. And of course, there's Palestine as well. There's Lebanon, and now we have Afghanistan. So it was a major step also for the OIC to take action on this. And obviously the credit for this basically goes to Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. Also to some extent to Turkey and Egypt, because Turkey, although the initiative was basically Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, and it was these 2 countries that galvanized the OIC member states, and also the big powers. Let's also not forget the credit that goes to the US, to Britain, to France, Germany, Russia, China, and Japan as well. Major powers that also participated and gave full support to this meeting. And I conclude with this.
All right. So, Ahmed, you are saying that now we will see interactions between the Afghan Taliban government with other countries will increase. And before that, everyone was shunning them, basically. So the OIC resolved this problem. And you're also saying that this was not a donor conference. And the main issue was how to give aid to Taliban without recognizing them. There is a question in my mind, Ahmed, if you can take this. Is Imran Khan lobbying for the Taliban? This is what most of the people are saying. And we read different views, and some people call him Taliban apologists as well. So, or is he just thinking about safeguarding Pakistan's interests? Or just suppose that he is lobbying for them, then is it a good thing or a bad thing for Pakistan?
I'll begin with this. I don't think I've seen Prime Minister Imran Khan lobby in any extraordinary way for the Taliban government. maybe there was some concern among some observers initially after 15 August when it seemed that there was this jubilation in some government circles, some statements that were made that gave that sort of impression, and you've noticed that those statements disappeared later on, and after that it became very, I would say, formal, and Pakistan and no Pakistani spokesperson at any level in the Pakistani government came out to appear as if they're lobbying for the Taliban government, interim government in Afghanistan. So I do not think that Prime Minister Imran Khan lobbied for the Taliban government. However, some observers probably took the impression initially, I'm talking about the first maybe 15 days after the Taliban takeover in Kabul, probably there were some statements at various levels of probably the government or maybe the ruling party and elsewhere as well, maybe in the media as well, and social media and so forth. Maybe all of that combined created the misperception that somehow Pakistan is lobbying for the Taliban government. Obviously, Pakistan is not lobbying for the Taliban government. Pakistan is concerned about its own interests, and we being, of course, impacted by whatever happens in Taliban, in Afghanistan, we were concerned and we were eager actually to see things settle down in Kabul, and maybe that was misconstrued in some ways, and maybe also initially we also on our side, the government of Pakistan maybe at some levels, probably some parliamentarians and maybe someone else, maybe some people in the media probably gave the impression as if they were advocating for the Taliban. But I don't think that's the case. I think Pakistan is simply, and also the Prime Minister, is simply pursuing Pakistani interests instead of actually defending or advocating for anyone.
What do you have to say, Hassan?
Yes, I do agree with Ahmed that initially there was an impression that the Prime Minister was supporting the Taliban, or he was happy over the fact that they had come into power, but I think that was a misconception. I think the Prime Minister is someone who has been misunderstood over the years, and he has been given all these titles, like Taliban Khan, because of the fact that he has spoken for the Afghans and he has opposed the U.S. war on terror, which has resulted in hundreds and thousands of casualties, as well as led to mass displacement in Afghanistan and literally ruined the country. So that to me explains the reason why there is a perception that he supports the Taliban, which is completely false, because the Prime Minister has always stood for the sovereignty of Pakistan and Afghanistan, and he has always taken a very firm position against terrorism, as well as any actions committed by sovereign nations which are a violation of the sovereignty of another country. So I'm pretty clear on that, and I think a lot of it was a misconception, as Ahmed mentioned earlier. Now, just a point that, flowing from what Ahmed had said earlier, one point I wish to highlight, which is a concern that I have, is the fact that whilst the world has started engaging with the Taliban, or at least we see some hope that there will be some sort of an engagement with Taliban in relation to the provision of humanitarian assistance, the fact is that the Taliban would need to be repeatedly shown the mirror by Pakistan, and I don't think there's any other country which is in a position as Pakistan is to do that. Now that is important because we heard about this incident that happened at the border. I think it was yesterday, where there was some sort of clash between the Afghan troops and troops from our side in relation to border fencing. Now,
Exactly, I want to talk about that incident as well. It was 3 days ago.
Exactly, and the Taliban need to realize that they're living in the 21st century. The world has expectations, and if they want to make an entry in this privileged club where they become known as a sovereign nation, or not the Taliban, of course, but Afghanistan, and for the Taliban to represent Afghanistan at international forums, they're going to have to come up to speed, and they are going to have to deliver on the promises that they have been making in relation to the rights of women, minorities, and children. And frankly, those promises have not been fulfilled. Now that puts Pakistan on the spot as well, because Pakistan is doing all the heavy lifting on the Taliban's behalf, literally bending over backwards to convince the world to engage with them, because if Afghanistan goes south in terms of famine or deaths because of hunger, then it is Pakistan that will be impacted. So Pakistan will have to repeatedly tell them that they will have to change their ways, they will have to act more responsibly, they will have to deliver on their promises, because none of this will succeed unless the Taliban are able to show that they have understood what the world expects from them. So, recognition and all those things are pretty far off at the moment. At this point in time, the world is literally sense-checking if the Taliban are serious, and as Ahmed rightly mentioned, if the aid is going to trickle down to the people. Now, to do that, the Taliban will have to go a long way, and I hope that they have learned some lessons by in this conference that has recently been convened.
All right. Ahmed, are we doing more than we need to do for Afghanistan? Because we all know that peace in Pakistan is linked to a peaceful Afghanistan. But is the government of Pakistan overdoing its efforts for Afghanistan, especially considering the incident which Hassan just mentioned, that the Taliban soldiers disrupted the erecting of a security fence on the Pakistan-Afghan border? And just a few hours ago, I saw a video which has emerged just today. Taliban are retaliating against Pakistanis along the Durand lines. So what do you have to say about this?
Right, I think we have a huge challenge in Pakistan. I don't think Pakistan is overdoing anything with regards to Afghanistan. Although Pakistan has done a lot in terms of being the first country to provide humanitarian aid before other countries followed suit immediately after the Taliban takeover of Kabul on 15 August, it was, and nobody actually wanted to send their aircraft to Afghan airports, to Mazar-e-Sharif and Kabul. It was Pakistan that began, and everybody followed suit by sending Pakistan International Airline aircraft to Mazar-e-Sharif and Kabul, and then encouraging and cooperating with the UN and other countries, and obviously, and then others follow suit. So Pakistan did do things that seem to be indicating that we are overdoing. But we have now, but that was initially, obviously, it was a unique circumstance. As of now, at this moment, I don't think Pakistan is overdoing anything. In fact, we need to actually review what we can do, because that phase is over now, the Taliban takeover, and we have entered another phase now. And this phase requires a rethinking of how we will approach Afghanistan. And I think one of the key things that we need to think about is how to help Afghan Taliban and also other Afghan politicians and other Afghan political parties, how to transform into a normal country where they have coalition governments, where they have participation by all segments of society, where minorities have their rights, women and other segments of the population. And Taliban did initially do some positive things initially in terms of not retaliating or avenging or taking revenge against those who worked in the previous government, for example, or those who were members of other political parties in Afghanistan. They did not avenge that, so that was a good precedent by Taliban, unexpected. Nobody expected that. And as a result of that, we did not see a resumption of civil war, and we did not see a large number of refugees. Both of those things did not happen. And that was mainly because Taliban actually restrained itself and did not repeat the mistakes of 25 years ago, 1996 to 2001. So Taliban did give initially an impression that it has changed, but it's not enough. We need to help the Taliban and other Afghans to move forward to accept each other, to agree to work with each other, because without them doing this, Afghanistan will remain in this deadlock. And initially, we might have succeeded with the CFM, and we will see, of course, now in the next few days and weeks and months, we will see aid for the Afghan people. But this aid will end at some point, and this is not a permanent solution. The permanent solution would be for the Afghans to reconcile with each other and basically accept the differences that they have and move forward with that peacefully. And we need to help in that. And for that, we also need to reach out to all the other segments of the Afghan population, including those Afghans who were members of the previous government and those Afghans who are diametrically opposed to what the Taliban, for example, stand for and so forth. We need to bring all of these people together, because only through that can Afghanistan be stabilized. We should not be seen, obviously, we should not be seen also taking the side of just the Taliban. And this is a very difficult. It's easier said than done. Obviously, I'm just explaining it, but I know it's very, very difficult.
But Ahmed, I just want to know about these incidents at the border. These foot soldiers of Taliban or the low tier commanders. Do you think the top leadership of Afghan Taliban is failing in containment of these issues?
I'm not aware of the veracity, Qudsiya, of some of the tweets and videos seen on Twitter and other social media. So I will be a little cautious in commenting on those videos, actually. But
the government of Pakistan has officially, talked to the Taliban about the fencing issue, the incident that took place 3 days ago. So it's
yes, the fencing. The fencing is another thing. I was just commenting on the videos of firing and mortars and shells and shelling and so forth. So I will not verify the videos, but I will just say, yes, obviously the fencing issue was a problem. And this is not surprising, because actually we did have a similar couple of instances back in 1996 and 2001. It did happen at that time as well. And there were issues with regards to the Durand line with the Taliban, and there were some skirmishes also on the international border between Afghanistan and Pakistan during the first Taliban government in 1996 to 2001. If I remember correctly, there were 2 major incidents during those 5 years in the first Taliban government. So for this to happen now again, it's not absolutely surprising. It's not totally surprising. It was expected. Also expected is the fact that Afghan Taliban will be reluctant to act against the TTP, which is the major concern for Pakistan, and we would like to see Afghan Taliban take decisive action against the TTP. Afghan Taliban so far are reluctant to take that decisive action for multiple reasons, but they are cooperating with Pakistan. They are working with Pakistan to facilitate talks with TTP, for instance, or provide access and so forth, or mediate. But obviously, this is not enough from our perspective, because even the previous government, the Ashraf Ghani government, and before that the Karzai government, also did play that role, the role of mediation. So that's not a big difference for us in terms of what Ashraf Ghani government was doing and then what the Taliban government is doing now. So we would like to see more Afghan Taliban government doing more. Will they be able to do that? We have to understand also that they have internal divisions, the Taliban government. They have you have 2 or 3 different groups within the Taliban. You have the group of Taliban leadership which was in Doha talks, which dealt with the world. You have another group now which is post August 15 ruling in Kabul right now. And then you have, of course, the grassroots Taliban, who are a bit more harsher really than these 2 other groups. So it's a very delicate situation, and I'm sure 100% Qudsiya that if you speak right now to senior Pakistani officials, some of them might even tell you that we also need to be very careful when we're talking to our Afghan counterparts, because they do tell us, and they might be telling their Pakistani counterparts, you have to take it easy on us, because we have hardline elements within Taliban down the line at the grassroots level who we cannot really push too hard. So otherwise things might get out of control. So it's a very delicate situation everywhere, and let's see how it moves forward. But it is a matter of concern what happened with the fencing, but not surprising.
Right. Okay, very informative, Ahmed. Hassan, can you please take this question, and we will just wrap it up then, because both of you have to leave early. Do you think that Afghanistan, and by Afghanistan I mean the Afghan Taliban, will they take concrete steps against all these terrorist organizations, particularly Al-Qaeda, Daesh and TTP? The TTP factor, is especially worrisome for Pakistan.
Right. So, Qudsiya, only time will tell if the Taliban are able to take action against different factions within Afghanistan. Afghanistan is a country that has not had a proper government, barring a few years in most of its history. So it all needs to be seen. Only time will tell if the Taliban are going to be able to curb all these different factions that are operating within Afghanistan. Now, I do agree with the statement made by Ahmed that the Taliban also wish for the world to understand the fact that they are a new government. They're trying their level best, perhaps, to bring the situation under control. But really, I mean, in the end, they will have to deliver on some of their promises, some of the key promises that they've made. So they will have to deliver on those. Otherwise, the trust that has been generated through this conference would be lost shortly thereafter. Therefore, they will have to make sure that they undertake those steps, they engage with the world community directly or through the heavyweights in the Muslim world like Pakistan, Turkey and Saudi Arabia, and take it from there.
All right. So you are saying the interest generated by this conference needs to be maintained. And one of you, I think you said it, Taliban will repeatedly need to be shown the mirror by Pakistan. I think Hassan, you said it.
Yes. I mean, look, that's the reality, isn't it? I mean, they may be trying their best to change things, but unless and until they understand what they need to do to come up to speed, what are the steps they need to take to come in the good books of the international community, till such time, Pakistan will have to do some hand-holding, and if they commit any blunders, then Pakistan will have to be the first one to tell them that, look, you have blundered and you will have to change this if you want to maintain the relationship of engagement with the world. So yes, I mean, it puts Pakistan in a spot, but that's Pakistan doesn't have any option either. Pakistan will have to do that. So the hope is that the Taliban realize that times have changed. They have to transition from an insurgency into a government, and they have to deliver on the promises that they've made. Otherwise, this will not get any better for them or their country.
All right. Okay. Can I just have your concluding remarks about the outcome and achievements? If I ask you if you're going to mark it 1 out of 10, how do you think, how successful was this OIC session in Pakistan?
Is that a question for me?
For both of you, yes. You can give your concluding remarks, then we will wrap it up.
So look, I mean, in terms of Pakistan's efforts, Pakistan has literally done the unthinkable. I would give Pakistan a 9 out of 10 in terms of the outcome, the immediate outcomes, the world getting sensitized to the crisis unfolding in Afghanistan. Again, I would give a 9 out of 10 for that. In terms of whether this will trickle down to the grassroots level, whether this is going to lead to relief for the Afghans, we don't know. Therefore, I will give it a 5 or a 6 out of 10. But I'm hopeful that the further engagement that will accrue from now on between the Taliban and the rest of the world will make the Taliban realize what they need to do, and hopefully all of this will also help Pakistan overcome its image problem that has been its biggest challenge over the last many years.
Thank you, Hassan. It was very interesting to know your perspective. Thank you for your time.
Thank you to you, and thanks to all the listeners, and thank you, Ahmed. Speak to you soon. Bye.
Okay, Ahmed, where will you rank this session from 1 to 10? And I would like to have your concluding remarks now.
Right, Qudsiya, and thank you, Hassan. I will just refrain, Qudsiya, from giving any 1 to 10 thing, because see, in international diplomacy, it's very hard to simplify such a complex, huge diplomatic exercise in those simple terms. This was the largest meeting on Afghanistan in the world, huge diplomatic effort. Although I can do one thing, I can rate the fact that in a very short span of time, the Ministries of Foreign Affairs of Pakistan and the Ministries of Foreign Affairs of Saudi Arabia, and to some extent also Turkey and Egypt, managed to, in a very short time, to put together and convince so many countries to gather in one place. That is remarkable. This is huge. This is remarkable. That was a big thing. But in terms of the event itself, it was hugely successful because it resolved a very intricate and delicate problem, which was how to help the Afghans without appearing to be helping the Afghan Taliban. And that was a very intricate diplomatic problem. It required very fine diplomacy and fine walk, and somehow the OIC Secretariat managed to do that so far. And obviously we will see aid trickling down in the next few days and weeks and months for Afghan people. This will resolve one part of the problem, which is the Afghan people's hardships and the humanitarian problem. It will not resolve the problem of Afghanistan. This does not mean that Afghanistan is about to be resolved, the conflict itself. Only the economic, partially, the economic hardship, and to some extent also the humanitarian hardship will be contained to a great degree, not completely, but to a great degree. But this is a stopgap measure. It's an emergency measure. It's not a final solution. The final solution actually lies with the Afghan Taliban interim government, how they will use this opportunity. Let me remind you that this is the largest platform that the Afghan Taliban ever addressed. Never before did the Afghan Taliban got this kind of a platform to address the world and convince the world that they have changed. So far, the Doha talks, the meetings in Beijing, in Moscow, in Islamabad, in other regional capitals, they were important events, but they were not as big, as large as this platform that was provided in Islamabad by the OIC CFM. Unprecedented, the closed-door meeting in which the Afghan foreign minister addressed the world community, not just the Arab and Muslim countries, but also the P5, the big powers, Germany, EU, GCC, all these countries. It was one of its kind opportunity for the Afghan Taliban. I hope that the Afghan foreign minister, and we don't have any official statement as to what he said, but I hope that he convinced the international community to give Afghan Taliban some space, and we'll see the results of that also in the next weeks and months. Although I'm not very optimistic, because this will require really a big change. Because as I said, it's not just the West; it's also countries like Turkey and Indonesia that want the Afghan Taliban to change their ways with regards to women and so forth. So let's see. It's all in the hands of the Afghan Taliban. But as far as the humanitarian is concerned, this was a big, major event, one of its kind, historic, the first after 41 years, as you know. The last time the OIC CFM met in Islamabad for the same purpose was in 1980. So history in the making.
Indeed, it was a great historical event, and you said that the main challenge was how to help the Afghan people without appearing to help the Taliban. I completely agree with you, and it's always a pleasure knowing your views on latest developments. Thank you, Emma, and thank you everyone for listening. Inshallah.
Thank you, Qudsiya. And thank you, everyone. I see some friends here, and there were some before as well. And thanks to Hassan as well.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Qudsiya.
Thank you. And Allah Hafiz.